Miss Ann Compton Arnold, she has an MS in geology from Emory University. She has over 10 years in geologist with the Alabama Geological Survey, 5 years currently with the Groundwater Assessment Program, and 5 years working in the Oil and Gas Board and Energy Division, and worked as a consulting geologist in the environmental industry for over 20 years. And personally, she has some family forest land in Marengo County that her father, Brian Compton, has helped to operate and manage. And she also owned and operated a aquaculture property in Greene County. And I bet that probably involves some catfish or something. So Ann, come join us and share with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I hope that I can bring some interesting information. It's going to be a change in gears. Again, I'm Ann Compton Arnold. I'm a geologist with the Geological Survey. I have brought some maps with me. You may have seen them. I'm going to talk today about the general geology of the state and specifically what might be under your trees. Do you have oil, gas, or maybe critical minerals? And don't forget the dirt. Okay, so first of all, the general framework of geology is 5 geologic regions. So the geology is really important in determining how the landform looks to begin with. So I'm starting at the top, the Highland Rim, this area by Huntsville, Decatur. This is limestone, Paleozoic rocks. The terrain up there is karst, which means there's caves and sinkholes, lots of groundwater flows up there. The next area is the Cumberland Plateau area. This would be looking like the Paleozoic rocks of sandstone and also iron ore. So there's coal seams. This is where Tuscaloosa is. Then we go down to the Valley and Ridge, which is a very deformed area. This is a part of the Appalachian mountain building activity. So these are sedimentary rocks that have been faulted and folded. And this is, historically Birmingham. And then we get to the Piedmont. And the Piedmont is a very interesting area geologically. This is sort of, you can think of it as the core of the mountain building of the Appalachians. So there's a lot of minerals. These are high grade to low grade metamorphic. And metamorphic rocks, if you don't know, are temperature and pressure dependent. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then you see the line that's dividing the lime green of the rest of the state. So that's the coastal plain. And so more than half of Alabama is underlain by a thick wedge of sediment that can be carbonate, could be silica, but it sort of onlaps onto basement rock. Okay, so I just gave you a lot of geology. And what I want to talk about are maps are important, and they've been important for a really long time. And so this particular photograph is showing you the iron mining. This is the steel industry in Jefferson County, Alabama. So obviously, historically, resource and understanding where resources are is very, very important. And then I'm showing you here oil platform. This is built in the 80s and into the 90s. And what's important about resources of the state is for this particular, all the offshore natural resources, we're funding the Educational Trust Fund and the General Fund for the state, and we're still living off of the revenue, the principal and interest of this trust. So it's pretty important in terms of understanding your resources. So the early state geologic maps, okay, so the state of Alabama was founded in 1819. The Geological Survey was founded in 1848. Okay, so that's a long time. A lot of people don't understand that the reason for that is the same reason that you're sitting in your seat. It's an important question to understand, what should I do with my land? What is the higher and better use? So the state recognized that, and the survey, this was one of the first maps put out. This is Twomey and Smith's map in 1878. And it actually helped drive Alabama into the industrial age, to iron and steel. And now I'm going to show you, this is the 1878 map, and then I'm going to show you the 1989 map. Okay, so 100 years later, you've got a much more detailed map. And this is at 1 to 250,000 scale. So this is a big scale map. But it's just showing you all the geologic features. You still see the coastal plain, and then you see those geologic provinces. I don't think I talked about the fall line, but that's where the waterfalls are, where the coastal plain meets the basement rock. But what's important is that you, as a landowner, are going to be more interested in the quad sheets. I'm sure many of you have looked at the green topo sheets before you go out and walk your land. You're looking at the elevation. Well, what I'm showing you here is the geologic interpretation on your property. So in other words, this is showing you what rock is underlying that particular area. So this would be at a quad scale. This would be a lot more useful if you were going to build a quarry or whatever you're going to build. You're going to want to know where the rocks are. But having said that, these particular 7.5-minute quad sheets, which is a 1 to 24,000 foot scale, like a topo sheet, they're really not available for most of the state. So it's less than half of the state has this detailed level of geologic mapping. Now we do have the topo mapping, but I'm talking about here the geologic mapping. It's been done where it's needed to have been done, right? So wherever there's a major transportation or industrial need, it's been done, which is primarily in that faulted valley and ridge area I talked about, or and then going into the Piedmont. So really the eastern part of the state, not as much in the southern half of the state. So I'm showing you future mapping. This is showing you the standard. I wanted it all at once. The difference between how we're looking at things now with satellite imagery. So here on the right, you're looking at LiDAR, and I'm kind of comparing it to what a standard 7.5-minute quad sheet would show you. So you see a lot more detail in the elevation data because you can see through the canopy. You know, so when geologists go out in the field, they can't see through the trees. So a lot of times the mapping season for geologists is very short in Alabama. It's usually about 4 months. And then the vegetation grows too much. So I guess I'm not an anti-forest person, but geologists do like to go out when they can see more of the ground. And then obviously as computers have changed the world, we're able to quantify more things with these digital maps. It gives us a lot more information. So summing that up, you know, this is showing you that the history of the Earth, okay, it kind of tells a story, and you can understand it after you've made the map and you've interpreted it. So, you know, when you look up by Huntsville, you know, those are Paleozoic rocks between 250 million to 600 million years old. Then when you go down to that Piedmont area, you're more than 600 million years old, many of those rocks, and they've been exposed to a lot of intense pressure and heat through metamorphism. So that's also interesting. So now I'm going to pivot the talk a little bit to talk about some resource development that's been happening in the Piedmont area, the graphite. So graphite is a low-grade metamorphic mineral composed of carbon, and it was declared a critical mineral just a few years ago in 2021 by the USGS. And the reason for that is because of the advent of electric vehicles. So the thought process being that, you know, this carbon core is going to be the core of these batteries. And so that means that there's a great interest in, you know, in mining graphite. And actually it was mined here in this part of the state for, during World War I and World War II. Those mines became sub-economic in 1953 and were mostly closed. But now they're kind of re-emerging, and more than 42,000 acres have been leased in Coosa and Chilton County area. So it's a very interesting growth. And right now the goal is to produce 7,500 metric tons a year. And the company that's doing this is Westwater. You may have heard of Westwater Resources. They purchased Alabama Graphite just a few years ago. You can look that up. And also vanadium mining is developing. I want to show you this graphic because this is really important. If you can focus on the orange circle there in Alabama, that's Coosa reserves. And so that's showing 3.5 million metric tons of battery-grade graphite that the USGS estimates is available. So it's the second highest reserve, only beaten by Alaska with 8 million short tons. But the difference being, obviously, that Alabama is close to the automaking industry. So there's some real synergy there. Okay, so now I'm pivoting again to talk about laws, okay, because things change. People really need to understand laws in Alabama for how mining, and so there's surface rights and there's mineral rights, and just that becomes a complex subject, but it's really important to understand that the mineral right owner is actually dominant to the surface right owner. And so that becomes important if there is an actual play in an area. Now, I know I put that out there. And looking at the jurisdiction, like how is this being regulated? So the State Oil and Gas Board regulates oil, gas, coal bed methane, and now carbon storage. So that's all within the office in Tuscaloosa. Now, coal itself for coal mining is regulated out of Jasper, Alabama by the Alabama Surface Mining Commission. And now the non-fuel, the surface mining for non-fuel minerals, which would be graphite, vanadium, many of these other, they're rare earth minerals, and these rare earth elements are being identified as very useful and strategic. And so when, that means that there could be more interest in those particular minerals. And so there's a new division, and that's in the Alabama Department of Labor. More information than you probably need, but if you're having, a landman come to you and offering you some sort of a standard lease, just recognize that it's a freedom of contract state, that you can absolutely have any term that you want in your lease. So you need to make sure that you are protecting your interest, and this would be money well spent if you're in this position to seek out qualified attorney for advice. Okay, so now I'm going to give you pretty pictures. This is the Highland Rim, so we're going back up to northern Alabama, and if you can see, and there's a cave, and you can see the pretty waterfall. This is coming over limestone, and then that's a sinkhole. And then this is the Cumberland Plateau. This is Tuscaloosa. This is the Pottsville Formation, which has really famous coal seams in it. And these cliffs are very fossiliferous chalk formation. This is in Demopolis, Alabama, Selma chalk. And then this is the lower coastal plain, the beach. Got to get the beach in there. But I really put this in for a reason, because sand is a very valuable commodity. Okay, so we're going to come back to that thought. Half of Alabama is underlain by a whole lot of this, and that has value. Okay, so as Alabama grows, the population is growing, water use is increasing, and land use is developing. Okay, so that means the demand, you're going to have more demand for natural resources, timber, sod, sand, gravel. Okay, and then this picture is showing you cumulative land use change. You probably can't see it as well, but all the red areas are rapidly growing and being urbanized, okay? Huntsville, Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, and Montgomery. But you can't see the green as well, but it's all the lower half of the state. There's green because it's been green, okay? But that's where all the forests are growing. And the idea I wanted to show you is that the green is sort of supplying the red, right, for the growth. So a lot of this products, and of course, all throughout the Southeast. And then I'm showing you population density. So Madison County is at a rapid growth rate, probably one of the highest in the United States, and so is Baldwin County. So these will be moving up and displacing, I believe Madison will displace Mobile as number 2 pretty soon. And Alabama is increasing by 3 times within 50 years, the population. So that means the landscape where you live and raise trees will be very different. And I think that's an important consideration in your planning, is that the area is going to grow. And I'm showing you that water use has increased 3 times in between 2010 in 2040, and that's from the Office of Water Resources. So again, the basic resources will continue to increase, okay? So the need for timber, sod, all of that. So the wrap-up point I want to make is that the ground beneath your trees may become just as or even more valuable than your standing crop of trees. Something to think about and incorporate in your plan as you manage. And you may not have critical minerals like we talked about, but like I said, the sand and gravel and sod and all those materials are critical as construction is happening. So it's very prudent to have the whole picture of the demographics of what's been happening in the growth of the southeastern United States. And you can find maps. If you want to get maps, they're available at our website. They're available at our office. We have a publications office. We're on the University of Alabama campus in Tuscaloosa. I brought some maps with me. They're of the watersheds of Alabama. They are free. I also have strategic habitat of the state of Alabama. So anything you're interested in, we have it, and that's probably all for now. If you have any questions, I know it's right before lunch. I just wanted to say thank you, and that's my contact.